Hello and welcome back to Punctual Politics. I'm Dawson Iasillo, Opinion Senior Editor.
And I'm Jackson Hatcher, opinion writer.
And I'm Natalie Hill, Senior News Editor. Hopping right into this episode's topic, as of mid-February, the Department of Homeland Security has been in a partial shutdown after a congressional stalemate over immigration enforcement policies. As of the date of filming, which is February 25th, we are still in this partial shutdown. This differs from a full shutdown because it is only the Department of Homeland Security affected as opposed to the government as a whole, and essential workers will continue to work without pay until after the shutdown concludes, after which they'll receive back pay. Non-emergency functions will cease within the Department of Homeland Security, so that's non-emergency, disaster response, things like that will shut down, but emergency services will continue. And earlier, TSA PreCheck and Global Entry were initially shut down, but the Department of Homeland Security actually reversed that decision recently and restored those services. So my question to you guys is, given what we know about recent ICE actions and kind of immigration policy as a whole, do you find this shutdown warranted, given that that was kind of the sticking point?
I do. I think, and a majority of Americans would agree with me, that at least some checks should be put on ICE and the Department of Homeland Security as a whole. And, certainly I think it would be better if, everyone in Congress could recognize the want and the need for that, and work to implement that, through just a normal, legislative process. But seeing as that doesn't really seem like it's going to happen, I think it is warranted to shut down the government. And I think it's more warranted than, other government shutdowns that shut down the whole government for, a couple specific policy, arenas, because it's not targeted. Like, people who aren't related to the Department of Homeland Security at all are still functioning normally. They're still getting their pay. So I think it is a very justified action to keep the department shut down by the Democrats.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is one of those rare cases where we need to put getting paychecks and money almost on the back burner. Obviously, we need money and our paychecks to live, and but we've been through hard times as Americans, and in American history, our economy has seen hard times, and we can bounce back from that economically and financially. Money works itself back in its own cycle, but this is one of those things that humanity needs to come first.
Right.
And I mean, the point of this government shutdown is to cause disruption. There has not been a single point in history where there hasn't been some lows before change happens without there being some sort of growing pains. And I think this is kind of a growing pain towards the right direction.
Right.
Yeah. So between Trump's two terms, there have been 2 full shutdowns and I believe 3 partial shutdowns. Do you find that telling? What do you make of that?
I do. I think that says less about Trump than it does about the willingness of, the Congress to work together. And I think Trump kind of exacerbates that divide. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't any government shutdown during the Biden years. And that's not from, lack of trying from the Republicans. They were willing to shut it down over a lot of things, over the border, over, student funding.
Right.
But it never materialized because Democrats did what Republicans won't do, and they, bit the bullet and were like, you know what, we'll take this on the chin. We'll give them some of what they want. And this, happened even when Democrats, lost the House in 2022.
Yeah.
So I think it's more an indication of the willingness of the Republicans to compromise than Donald Trump himself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think right now we're almost in a time of I think America as a whole is, especially with the Epstein files being released, I feel like there's been a lot of people after that that have kind of recognized that us versus them mentality versus left versus right mentality. And I think that the government and Congress recognizes that almost. And I think that could almost be a reflection of these government shutdowns as well.
Yeah, and like, I also think it's interesting that government shutdowns are like very new. Like they used to be like really,
Very rare.
really rare.
Very rare.
Like, I
It
think
was a big deal if a government shutdown was
yeah, I
happening.
think before Clinton, in the 20th century, there was one. I think it was in Jimmy Carter's presidency. And I could be getting the details wrong, but it wasn't like a political dispute. I think they were just literally running late.
I think
It was
yes,
a one-day shutdown.
Yes, it was a one-day shutdown.
And then you get to the 90s, and both sides were like, you know what, it's a lot more advantageous to do this to,
Yeah.
and I also think that's
Again, part of the divided thing. I think it's another thing that they're able to scare and threaten and kind of
Mhm.
poke the bear with.
yeah, I think it's an indication that, as we become more polarized, we are more willing to use more and more like nuclear tools. It's the
Yeah.
reason why there's always if not a government shutdown, whenever there's the possibility for one, at least like strong like indications or like
Yeah.
talkings about it, right?
Right.
Like, oh, it's a story every time, like, oh, will the government shut down or will they get it done, or
Yeah.
whenever we hit the debt ceiling.
Yeah, I agree.
That leads into my next question really well, actually. But do you feel that these shutdowns are almost becoming normalized? And if so, what do you think the implications of that might be?
Absolutely. I think the polarization and how deep our divide has become in this country, it's almost like a jab at the other side. And it's almost like it's kind of like a Cold War vibe. Like no one's like really doing anything except for shutting down the government, and they kind of have been playing tennis, just like deciding whether or not to keep the government open or
Right, yeah.
not. And it's almost, dare I say, immature. Like it's almost like we're kind of forgetting like the American people here
Yeah,
and just kind of like toying with each other. And it's really kind of like awkward to watch.
Yeah, I think it's certainly normalized. Like it's not at all unexpected. Like it's to the point where like we before we were even filming this episode, we were like, the government shut down. We
Yeah.
forgot that happened.
We kind of forgot that we were in a partial shutdown.
God, it happened. And I think the commonality of things like this, or like fights over the debt ceiling, I think are kind of an indication of like a very fundamental problem with Congress, in that they aren't like legislating. They aren't
Yeah.
performing their, actual normal duties.
The duties are to represent the people of, in Congress, it's to
Mhm.
represent the people of your state.
Yeah.
And they just aren't.
Yeah, and there's
And that goes across the board, Democrats and Republicans. I don't
Yeah.
think either party is doing a good job of representing their constituents.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. Like, I think the one thing you could get any voter in America to agree on is that Congress is dysfunctional and basically worthless.
Absolutely.
I think that regardless of who's been in power for the past, decade, and most Americans
Yeah.
say the same thing.
There are very few people in Congress right now who I can confidently say I think has their constituents' best interest at
Yeah,
heart.
and it's
There's a
just-
handful, but not very many.
Yeah,
Not very many.
and it's not just even when we're not in the throes of like a debate over a shutdown, like each new Congress over the past decade has broken the record for being the most unproductive Congress.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is
They're
currently
too busy arguing about shutdowns. They don't have time to do anything
Yeah,
else.
and I'm like, I was saying to a friend earlier, I'm like, I don't really think the role of a congressman or a senator anymore is to legislate. I think their main job description is to like clip farm.
Yeah.
Is to get in front of cameras and just clip farm.
Yeah.
And hope that ends up helping them win the next election.
Yeah.
When really they could, like, I don't know, solve issues with legislation.
Truly.
Because if they're not going to do that, why do we even have a legislative body?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I think that, side point, I think that's also why Donald Trump is so successful, because he
isn't being held accountable.
He sidesteps it. Like Congress is unwilling to legislate or perform their duties,
Mhm.
and he's unwilling to listen to them.
Yeah.
And people like that, right?
Right.
He doesn't have to, go into the quagmire of Congress to get something done, at least his supporters would say.
Yeah.
He just signs an executive order and stuff happens, right?
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people like about him, honestly.
Yeah. Last question for you guys today, but do you feel in general that it's better for Congress to prioritize avoiding shutdowns, or should they stand firm on given principles?
I think it depends on the situation. I think there's definitely been some petty government shutdown reasonings where Americans are going hungry and not getting their paycheck and their water's getting shut off. And I mean, real life results are happening of the hands of our top people that are representing us. But I think in this case, there's got to be some uncomfortable points for change to happen, and this isn't petty arguments. This is humanity and lots of people and lots of Americans that are at the hands of this decision. And so I think it's best that we hold out as long as possible until change happens with this partial government shutdown.
You're making the humanity argument, so I'll make the political analyst
Yeah,
argument
do it.
that if you are like a politician in Congress and your party is responsible for a government shutdown, I think it's politically a very bad idea to end it, right? Your party will throw you to the wolves, because I think that's part of the reason why government shutdowns are more common nowadays is, well, voters kind of expect them, right? Like, I'll be on, I'm guilty of this. I wrote a whole column for the last government shutdown. It was like, here's why I think the Democrats should shut the government down.
Yeah.
Right. And, they were put in a political position where if they, back down, then they're going to be thrown to the wolves of their own party. And I think you've seen that with how little people like Chuck Schumer, right?
Yeah. I think there's almost like too much loyalty in politics right now.
Yeah.
People aren't willing to hold each other accountable, which, again, like you said, I think is why Trump has been so successful in passing all of his policies and pieces of legislature, because loyalty is running too deep to the point where we can't criticize people of our own party. And if someone,
I can.
well, you should. It's normal to criticize your own party and to criticize politicians. And we've almost put politicians on like a pedestal of like they're like acting like they're celebrities, and they're just not.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Punctual Politics. As a reminder, the views expressed on this podcast do not represent the views of the Daily Nebraskan as a whole.
Sure to follow us on social media and follow our YouTube channel at the Daily Nebraskan, and be sure to tune into Punctual Politics every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday.